Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting session. We're going to be jumping into a bigger, broader topic than we have been covering before. And what we really want to cover today and share with you is not only is it important to be a part of an ecosystem, but for those of you who are looking to build your own ecosystem and have a place where two key common things happen without a whole lot of energy, without a whole lot of effort, I'm going to be introducing you guys to Kenny Browne from Partner Fleet and Riley Carr from G2, who have an experience around building portals, building directories, and even more importantly, how to encourage and give developers a place to build into your ecosystem. And so it's almost the reverse role that we've been talking about here today is a lot of us are looking to build onto a platform, but what if you could then attract and make it easy for developers to build into yours? And so this is a fantastic opportunity to listen and learn things that a lot of people are trying to do on their own and measure, build, and manage all of that. And so they're going to give you a case study and a walkthrough of what it takes and what might you ought to consider in that process. And so welcome, Kenny. Welcome, Riley. The show and floor is yours. Let us know what happens next.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin, for that intro. Fantastic. Yep. So I'm Kenny Browne, CEO of Partner Fleet. Riley Carr is joining me, technical product manager at G2. And we're going to be talking about how to launch integrations. Justin kind of gave it away a little bit, but also ecosystem and how that affects. This is also a unique one for me because I was employee number 5 at G2. I was responsible for the starting of G2's integration strategy, API strategy, and I was there for 6 years. And then I left, several years ago, and Riley's now come in to pick up the pieces that I left, fix my mistakes, and launch their developer portal and ecosystem. So you get to hear a little bit about what that full journey was and where Riley's stepping in to take it over. Before we get in too deep into it, I do want to talk about why integrations matter. And right now, it's because 70% of the buyer's journey is digital. They're asking friends and coworkers. They're doing research on G2. They're looking at partner sites. They're going to Google or ChatGPT to figure out which tools they should be using. And whether or not it works with their existing tech stack is a top 3 buying consideration, meaning for SMB and mid-market, it's actually the most important thing beyond does it actually solve my problem? And for enterprise, it's right behind security. And so integrations actually come up in a majority of sales deals, of opportunities. But it's not just for net new deals, net new opportunities. It actually has a massive impact on your existing customers as well. So Rollworks did a study on this, ran the numbers, and they found customers with just one integration renewed at a 30% higher rate than customers with 0. Customers with 4 or more renewed at a 135% higher rate than customers with 0. So more than twice as likely to renew if they just had 4 integrations installed. And so if you think about this, about the buyer evaluating your solution versus a competitor, if your integrations are visible and match with their tech stack, you make their shortlist. If not, ultimately you end up being invisible. And so how does this, who's this for? How does this matter at different stages of a company's evolution, right? There's product versus platform. HubSpot's a platform. There's a lot of products out there as well, but a product really is a single solution with the goal of solving a few use cases. And whereas a platform is a network solution, right? Solving exponential use cases, trying to expand what it can do. And Scott Brinker said something along the lines of, this is not an exact quote, but a platform binds disparate products together into a common mission, solving a common problem for the customer. And so as we're going through this, if your strategy is around being a product, focusing on the single set of solutions that you're focusing on, there's going to be elements of this that are going to appeal more to you. But if you're on that platform journey and you have that as a strategy top down, this whole thing hopefully will appeal to you. I am curious if y'all could drop in chat whether or not you think your company is a product or is a platform, or honestly, maybe you guys think you're a platform, but you're not actually there yet. Would love to know what the makeup is of that. So jumping into those four ways to launch integrations, really there's build in-house, there's iPaaS unified APIs, there's APIs for DIY for your customers, and then there's the full ecosystem. I'm going to walk through each of these, talk a little bit about when they're best used, when it's better to use other methods, and talk about, pros and cons of all of them. So for building in-house, really, this is the ones where your engineering team is going to own it. So you're going to want to focus on the ones that are most strategic, right? That's going to be, if you need to integrate with a CRM like HubSpot, that's going to be, you want to own that. Your core business systems that you need to work with, high customer demand that's going to open up opportunity for you. And part of the reason for this is the average integration takes at least 3 months to build. And so even if you have 2 engineers dedicated full-time to building integrations, you're only going to grow by roughly 8 integrations a year if done perfectly, right? I'm actually excited to see if this number is going to drop significantly with all of the AI innovation that's out there and how AI is going to affect the speed at which integrations can be created and launched. But even then, every integration is a trade-off. You're either building an integration or you're building a core feature for your customers, for your product. And so if you're spending time building all of them, that ultimately ends up being wasteful because you're blocking those core features. Engineering becomes a bottleneck. And then you actually have to maintain every integration you build. Whereas if you, the second option here that I mentioned is iPaaS, right? So this does give you the opportunity. It's a little easier than building it in-house. They give you broad coverage, but they end up being very shallow integrations, right? So you're able to launch more, launch faster, but they're not going to be as deep or complex unless you still involve your engineering team. The biggest difference between iPaaS and unified API is a unified API will actually store a copy of all of your data before passing it off to the other systems for those integrations, whereas an iPaaS is just transactional. It'll just pass the data back and forth with some translations in between them. And so a lot of companies will use iPaaS as a tool in their tool belt, but iPaaS generally tries to sell themselves as the entire tool belt, the only solution you need. The reality that I've seen talking to a lot of companies is that when they launch with iPaaS, they're able to launch 5 to 10 integrations for, maybe 5 to 10 customers each, maybe 20, and they're not able to actually launch the 100 that they thought they were going to. So again, tool in the tool belt. I'm going to pause in the middle and kind of switch to talk about decision matrices. Again, this is actually a good point because if you're just a product, you're kind of going to be looking at building in-house or building iPaaS. But if you're moving to platform, that's where these next 2 options really come into play. And deciding when to use each of these can be complicated, right? Again, the in-house builds should be high value, high demand. Those are going to be things like CRM, because if your HubSpot integration is broken, your product looks like it's broken. If there's anything like that, you have to own that. You don't want to outsource that to iPaaS or to anyone else. But for the ones that are maybe still high demand or lower value, or lower value but still, or sorry, higher value but lower demand, that's where an iPaaS really comes into play, right? I have an example here of like, you're going to build your HubSpot integration in-house, but maybe your sugar CRM, you're going to go with an iPaaS solution. Once you get past that and the value really isn't there for you to build it or maintain it in any way, that's where everything else is for your open ecosystem. That's where you're going to have those partners come to you and build because they're doing their own decision matrix. And even though they'll fall in the bottom quadrant for you, you might fall in the highest quadrant for them. And so they're going to make the decision to build against you and put their team into using your APIs, which is that next version, right? Or that next step. You can expose APIs, allow your customers to build it themselves, allow your partners to build it themselves. But the biggest thing that happens here that I've seen over and over again is there's the idea, the field of dreamsmith. If you build it, they will come. They won't. You still have to market it. You still have to get it out there. And the biggest challenge companies face is that when they think about exposing APIs, they think that it's only for the developer who's going to be writing the code. But the reality is product managers are involved. They're deciding what needs to be built and why. Partner managers get involved to create business cases and evaluate contracts and things like that. RevOps and IT might get involved from security or legal perspectives. And so when you expose your APIs, a lot of companies will just do API docs, and that doesn't get you to the point you need to be to actually drive that demand. But I did want to, so I wanted to ask Riley here to step in. This is where I left G2, is we created APIs. Honestly, we had pretty basic API docs. It wasn't great. Riley is now stepping in to take this on. So Riley, just curious from your perspective, where is G2 today? And then like taking it on from this point, what were the first things that came to your mind as you were evaluating it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started at G2, we were just at the beginning of our self-service partner journey. G2 already had successful partnerships, but the process was a much more manual, resource-intensive journey. So our goal was to automate this process and give partners an opportunity to recognize the value that G2 can bring to their organization. In order to achieve this, we needed a centralized self-service option to showcase immediate value to partners through our developer portal. The developer portal was designed in an attempt to drastically reduce the time for completion for integrations and allow for partners to basically see all of the aspects that we have available to them without any intervention from G2 resources.
Awesome. Yeah. So you stepped in, and really what you just described is going from APIs to an open ecosystem, right? You described that self-service. But a lot of people, think about an open ecosystem, and they do think, again, field of dreams. Where it's really valuable is this graph here is actually an actual company's growth graph based off their experience platforming. So the first 6 years, they were more of a product. They didn't have their ecosystem. You can see growth, and it was good linear growth. But then they launched their ecosystem and they grew exponentially. And this is a couple years old. So even now they're growing even further, right? And growing even faster. And this is the journey ultimately, Riley, where you're stepping in is kind of that 6 year. This isn't G2's graph, but as an example. And the best thing about an ecosystem is it actually creates a flywheel. As you have more partners, you ultimately create more value, which will drive more customers to work with you, which ultimately drives more partners to be interested in integrating with you. And that goes over and over again. And that's why you see the largest ecosystems out there, the HubSpots, the Shopifys, win their categories because they're able to create this ecosystem. I kind of hinted at this before, so did Justin, but what we're talking about here is actually a journey. These are different ways to build integrations, but it is a journey that has to be taken. So I'm going to talk about Slack's journey, right? Slack had to seed their marketplace with dozens of integrations. They actually built around 80 integrations in-house and through iPaaS before they opened it up and exposed their APIs for partners to start building. So then they transitioned to being more partner-led, and they moved from dozens of integrations to hundreds of integrations in just a couple years. Now they're fully ecosystematic. Everything is partner-driven. A lot of their growth comes from partners. Their ecosystem is all built through partners, and they have thousands of integrations on their marketplace, and they're growing hundreds a year. And they're going to continue to grow because they've moved fully ecosystematic. But that was a decision made top down and treated like its own product completely as their ecosystem. And that's what a lot of companies don't realize, is that an open ecosystem actually requires a bunch of infrastructure. Riley mentioned the developer portal, but there's also app submission. There's a place for your customers to discover these integrations. There's reporting and analytics about the value, right? Rollworks would not have been able to determine that increased renewal rate if they didn't have everything in place. And so what does that journey look like? When you treat it and think about it like a customer's journey, you realize there's a lot of steps. First, the developer is going to come in, they're going to sign up, they need access to API credentials, they need documentation. And this is where most companies say, yep, I have an open ecosystem. We have a way for developers to get an API key, and we have documentation. We're open, anyone can build. But the reality is there's so much more. You need a submission process. You need to review them from a legal perspective, make sure they're signing any terms and conditions. You need to approve what they're doing. Many of you might be aware of the recent issue. I'm not going to name specific names, but a partner exposed their API key. And so all of the ecosystem's customers were now at risk, all of their data, because it was exposed through a partner. And if they didn't have this review process, that company would be on the hook for everything. So you have to take that additional step. And your legal team, your security compliance team is going to care very much. Once you get through approval, again, I mentioned a place for your prospects to discover while they're going through that digital buying journey before they've contacted sales. They need to know through a marketplace if your solution works with their existing solution, but also your existing customers to turn on integrations. They need that integration tab or something when they're logged in to go and turn them on. And then ultimately reporting, right? What customer attach rates look like, which partners are driving value, which partners are you driving value for, all needs to be part of it. So, Riley, I'm going to jump back over to you, let you talk a little bit about it. But Riley and his team built steps 1 through 3 as we were design partners on this. We worked together on, they built it, but they asked me for feedback. And then as they got further and finished that, they realized the rest of this process is actually where they're working with PartnerFleet now to manage that submission all the way through. But PartnerFleet can also handle this entire flow of 1 through 8. So Riley, I've got a few questions on screen, but I wanted to open it up to you to give a bit more of that, your experience, your journey in this and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So why did G2 choose the open ecosystem route? Here at G2, we have a concept called G2 Everywhere, which means offering our review data for as many customers and partners as possible. This ensures that we are growing partner relationships with our customers and bringing value to our partners as well, which is critical to the success of our customers. We're continuing to innovate our processes by leveraging MCP, which allows you to make quicker and better decisions for your customers, which in turn grants you faster access to our data. As far as the infrastructure that we prioritize first, our first key piece was our developer portal, as I mentioned earlier. Previously, there was no self-service model, and this process could take weeks and a lot of manual resourcing in order to gain access to our APIs. This process allows self-service creation of your organization, API tokens, OAuth apps, and allows you to begin testing your integration immediately. As far as self-service goes, this means that there's no need to contact G2 resources to gain access to API tokens or documentation to begin building your integration. We even created sample code examples in multiple languages to speed up your first API call. Another key point is ease of use. So we provide full onboarding documentation with a walkthrough guide of our portal, as well as how to begin testing your initial integration. When it comes to PartnerFleet and working with Kenny, our PartnerFleet integration empowers you to apply and complete the necessary steps to be a licensed ecosystem partner, which requires approval and legal review of your integration before you can be a listed marketplace integration. We also have specific sandbox data for testing. So to double down on our self-service and ease of use strategy, we created sandbox data that allows testing of all G2 functionality. Now with buyer intent being included, you can leverage competitive signals, market intelligence, and vendor insights. And moving on to the next one, which is what's some of the reaction been from our partners and customers. So in our initial testing, we leveraged feedback from design partners such as Kenny, who was a key design partner for helping us understand the processes and the next steps we needed to take to improve our self-service portal. We received many comments on our ease of use, how straightforward our portal was, and intuitive processes. And we provided even more access to data points, which has assisted our partners in making empowered decisions. We constantly are updating our documentation to make it more robust and ensuring self-service deployment. And we always allow an open door for feedback from partners to enhance our experience. And finally, your last question, Kenny, is what's been harder than expected? So sometimes simplifying processes aren't always that easy. And we attempted to build an internal solution for partners in order to be a licensed integration partner and found out that process to be challenging, which is then when we talked to Kenny again and found out that Partner Fleet can assist us with this and make this a much easier process. So they've enabled us to continue our focus on data availability while they handle partner applications. This is key for us to focus on our development and our data accessibility. Another challenge would be that monitoring partner integrations at scale can become very challenging. And there's always going to be ongoing maintenance and support, as well as QAs of approved integrations. And as with any company that is attempting to scale this type of process, we're looking at new approaches that we can navigate the best path forward for that. Currently, we have about 50 partner integrations to date, and we're hoping to double this number within a year. And also to reach this goal, we are launching a brand new partnerships collaboration at the end of this month, which will include a full overhaul of our partnership process. And at the end of this, I would also like to provide a link to our developer portal to allow anyone to come in and check out and see what we built so far.
Thank you, Riley, for the insight and all of that. I did have one question as you were talking about this that came up in my mind is, you mentioned the elements on the product side and all of that, but what was the team and where was the directive that came from at G2 to make this happen? Was this just a product initiative, or can you expand on that a little bit for me?
No, this came from a full company perspective of the fact that we were having issues with our partners not being able to find an easy solution for self-service to be able to integrate with existing customers and gain access to our APIs. Whenever there was someone interested in integrating with our APIs, they had to reach out, had to have a shared token shared with them, as well as documentation sent to them. That could take a while. They would have to request a support ticket in order to get that information. That type of flow is slow and sometimes broken. And so with providing this method, we have the ability for them to come in and start testing and create API keys, find the documentation, and everything full self-service without any intervention with G2.
Awesome. Yeah. That's exactly what I hear over and over again, right? For this to be successful, it does need to be a company initiative, a joint effort between product and partnerships with the executive team, the C-suite behind it. We do have a few extra minutes here, so I wanted to open it up for any questions in the chat. I did see one from Matthias that, yes, Zapier, Workato, those are types of iPaaS. There's also Tray, and then there's a lot of vertical ones like HR Tech has Merge, which does vertical iPaaS. But if anyone wants to drop any other questions into the chat, we can go after those, or we can move on. Give an extra minute for people to type if they want to. Awesome. Well, then I'll move on. So there are a couple things that we wanted to offer the people on this session and the people who rewatch it. If you want to get a demo of that flow that I talked about before, those 8 steps of the developer journey and the customer journey of Partner Fleet, go ahead, reach out. It's the infrastructure we've been talking about today, so you can see how that all works. And then we've officially launched our partner program directory. So we already have over 100 plus tech partner programs in there. But this is a place to discover which companies have an ecosystem, which companies have the opportunity for you to work with. And if you have one, feel free to jump in there, claim yours, or create your own listing to showcase your ecosystem or showcase your program. But if not, you can also just go here and look at the ones that are there. Maybe you'll find a great partner to start working with. And Riley posted in the chat the link to the developer portal. I want to again thank you, Riley, for joining us on this, Justin for hosting, and HubSpot for making it happen. And I just want to round it out with the last statement of the companies who make integrations easy to find, adopt, and use for both humans and AI will actually own the next wave of SaaS because we're moving into that AI era. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Justin.